The weather had turned very cold, and as a young girl waited on the train platform, she started to feel her hands and feet going numb. Looking around, she saw other people warming up by tucking their hands between their legs. Curious, she tried it too, and to her surprise, it worked. Her hands quickly warmed up. The following week, the weather was still chilly, and she went out for her first date. As they walked through the park, they sat down on a bench, and the girl felt the cold again. Remembering what she had done before, she put her hands between her legs. The boy, noticing, asked what she was doing. She explained, and he admitted his hands were cold too. In a playful, innocent moment, she offered to warm them up by placing his hands between her legs. "Does that feel better?" she asked with a smile. He nodded enthusiastically. Not long after, he mentioned his nose was cold, so she helped him warm it up as well. Then, a little later, he complained that he was still cold, especially down there in his package. She laughed, not entirely understanding, and tried to help him warm up again in the way she knew best. The next day, her friends asked how the date went. "It went fine," she said, grinning. "But it was so cold, I had to help warm poor John up. He was freezing. I didn't realize men's packages made such an awful mess when they thaw out, though." One day, a woman walks into a dentist's office and asks how much it will cost to extract wisdom teeth. $80, the dentist says. "That's a ridiculous amount," the woman says. "Isn't there a cheaper way?" "Well," the dentist says, "if you don't use an anesthetic, I can knock the price down to $60. "That's still too expensive," replies the woman. "Okay," says the dentist. "If I save on anesthesia and simply rip the teeth out with a pair of pliers, I can knock the price down to $20. "Nope," moans the woman, "it's still too much." "Well," says the dentist, scratching his head, "if I let one of my students do it, I suppose I can knock the price down to $10. "Marvelous," says the woman. "May I book my mother-in-law for next Tuesday, please?" Two elderly couples are driving on the highway, not going faster than 81 kilometers per h. A police officer pulls the car over. The grandpa asks, "Were we going too fast?" The officer replies, "No, but why are you driving so slowly?" Grandpa, "Can you drive faster?" Officer, "I think you can comfortably drive 100 kilometers per h. Grandpa, "But the sign says A81. Officer, "Yes, and? What do you mean?" Grandpa, "Well, doesn't that mean I should drive 81 kilometers per h? Officer, "No, that's just the number of the highway." Grandpa, "Oh, I see. Thanks for the tip." The officer then looks at the back seat and sees two elderly ladies sitting stiffly, with their eyes wide open and pupils dilated. Concerned, the officer asks the grandpas, "What's going on with the two in the back? Are they okay?" The other grandpa says, "Oh, they're fine. We just came off the B252. Bubba lands a job installing telephone poles for the local phone company. At the end of his first day, his new boss asks him, "So, Bubba, how many poles did you get installed today?" "3, sir," Bubba says proudly. "3? That's not enough, Bubba. You'll need to work a lot faster if you want to keep this job. By the end of the week, Bubba manages to increase his count to 5 poles a day. But his boss tells him it's still not cutting it. I'll give you 1 more week, Bubba. You need to be installing 10 poles a day, or you're out. 3 weeks in, though, Bubba's still only putting up 6 poles a day. Frustrated, his boss points across the yard. Look at that guy over there, Bubba. He installs 15 poles a day. And you can't even do half of that. Bubba shrugs. Yeah, but look at how much he's leaving sticking out of the ground. I went to the liquor store Friday afternoon on my bicycle, bought a bottle of scotch and put it in the bicycle basket. As I was about to leave, I thought to myself, what if I fell off my bicycle? The bottle would break. So I drank all the scotch before I rode home. It turned out to be a very good decision, because I fell off my bike 7 times on the way home. A violent tropical storm enveloped a sailing yacht off the southern coast of Florida, lasting all night and most of the next morning. When the sky finally cleared and the seas calmed, the people on the yacht realized they were grounded on a coral reef about a mile from shore, in shark-infested waters. Most of those aboard the yacht were badly injured from the ordeal. The only able-bodied individuals left were a doctor, a priest, and a lawyer. The doctor says, "Someone is going to have to swim ashore and get help. I'd volunteer, but most of the crew and passengers are in rough shape, and I'm needed here to care for them." The priest replies, "I would volunteer as well, but I may be needed to comfort the injured or perform last rites." The lawyer says, "No problem." He immediately strips off his shirt and dives into the shark-infested water. A great turbulence stirs in the water as the doctor and priest look on, and they soon notice that all the sharks have formed a double line from the yacht to the beach, allowing the lawyer to swim safely between them. "My goodness," says the priest, "it's a miracle." The doctor, watching the lawyer swim to shore, says, "No, Father, it's not a miracle, it's professional courtesy." One day at a busy airport, the passengers on a commercial airliner are seated, waiting for the cockpit crew to show up so they can get underway. The pilot and co-pilot finally appear in the rear of the plane and begin walking up to the cockpit through the center aisle. Both appear to be blind. The pilot is using a white cane, bumping into passengers right and left as he stumbles down the aisle. And the co-pilot is using a guide dog. Both have their eyes covered with huge sunglasses. At first, the passengers don't react, thinking that it must be some sort of practical joke. However, after a few minutes, the engines start revving and the airplane starts moving. The passengers look at each other with some uneasiness, whispering among themselves and looking desperately to the flight attendants for reassurance. Then the airplane starts accelerating rapidly down the runway. Some begin panicking. Some passengers are praying. And as the plane gets closer and closer to the end of the runway, the voices are becoming more and more hysterical. Finally, when the airplane has less than 20 feet of runway left, there is a sudden change in the pitch of the shouts as everyone screams at once. And at the very last moment, the airplane lifts off and is airborne. Up in the cockpit, the co-pilot breathes a sigh of relief and turns to the pilot. You know, one of these days the passengers aren't going to scream, and we're gonna get killed. In a Chinese prison, inmates are discussing why they're there. Zhang, what are you in for? Strangled my wife's lover. Got 15 years. How about you, Wei? Robbery and stabbing. 10 years. What about you, Wang? Attempted assault. 5 years. And you, Liu? Liu sighs. 25 years for being lazy. The others exclaim, What? How? Liu explains, Last night, my neighbour and I got tipsy playing Go and joked about Jinping and the government. When he left, I thought, I should report him. But it was late, so I figured I'd go in the morning. Liu shakes his head. Turns out, my neighbour wasn't as lazy. One day, an out-of-work mime is visiting the zoo and attempts to earn some money as a street performer. However, as soon as he starts to draw a crowd, the zookeeper grabs him and forcefully drags him into his office. The zookeeper then explains to the mime that the zoo's most popular attraction, a gorilla, has died suddenly. The keeper fears that attendance at the zoo will fall off. He offers the mime a job to dress up as the gorilla until they can get another one. The mime accepts. The next morning, before visitors arrive at the zoo, the mime puts on the gorilla suit and enters the cage. He discovers that it's a great job. He can sleep all he wants, play and make fun of people, and he draws bigger crowds than he ever did as a mime. However, eventually the crowds tire of him and he gets bored just swinging on tires. He begins to notice that the people are paying more attention to the lion in the cage next to his. Not about to lose the attention of the adoring crowd, he climbs to the top of his cage, crawls across a partition, and dangles from the top to the lion's cage. Of course, this makes the lion furious, but the crowd loves it. At the end of the day, the zookeeper comes and gives the mime a raise for being such a good attraction as a gorilla. Well, this goes on for some time. The mime keeps taunting the lion. The crowds grow larger, and his salary keeps going up. Then one terrible day when he is dangling over the furious lion, he slips and falls. The mime is terrified. The lion gathers itself and prepares to pounce. The mime is so scared that he begins to run round and round the cage with the lion close behind. Finally, the mime starts screaming and yelling, "Help! Help me!" But the lion is quick and pounces. The mime soon finds himself flat on his back, looking up at the angry lion, when he suddenly hears the lion whisper, "Shut up, you idiot! You want to get us both fired." "Doctor, don't laugh!" A man goes to the doctors and says, "Doctor, I've got this problem, you see. Only you've got to promise not to laugh." The doctor replies, "Of course I won't laugh. That would be thoroughly unprofessional. In over 20 years of being a doctor, I've never laughed at a patient." "Okay then," says the man, and he drops his trousers. The doctor is greeted by the sight of the tiniest weenie he has ever seen in his life. Despite his best efforts, he begins laughing, softly at first, then uncontrollably. Several minutes later, he manages to compose himself and wipes the tears from his eyes. "I'm so sorry," he says to the patient. "I don't know what came over me. I won't let it happen again." Now what seems to be the problem? The man looks up at the doctor with sad eyes and says, "It's swollen." Sam and his wife, Rachel, were playing golf at the club when she drove a 300-yard tee shot straight down the fairway. Sam said, "Wow, I have never seen you play this well before." "I took lessons," says Rachel. A couple of days later, on the tennis court in mixed doubles, she smashes her serves and never misses a point. Sam said to her, "Wow, I have never seen you hit so well before." "I took lessons," says Rachel. On the weekend, they settled into a nice dinner at home. Rachel brings out the perfect plates of beef Wellington, and Sam says, "Delicious. I have never seen you cook like this before." "I took lessons," says Rachel. After dinner, she gives him that look and they go upstairs. About 30 minutes later, Sam rolls over and says, "Wow, that was incredible. Amazing, so hot. I want a divorce." A senator is visiting a primary school. In one class, he asks the students if anyone can give him an example of a tragedy. One little boy stands up and offers that, "If my best friend who lives next door is playing in the street when a car came by and killed him, that would be a tragedy." "No," the senator says, "that would be an accident." A girl raises her hand. "If a school bus carrying 50 children drove off a cliff, killing everyone inside, that would be a tragedy." "I'm afraid not," explains the senator. "That is what we would call a great loss." The room is silent. None of the other children dare volunteer. "What?" asks the senator. "Isn't there anyone here who can give me an example of a tragedy?" Finally, little Johnny in the back raises his hand. In a timid voice, he says, "If an airplane carrying a senator was blown up by a bomb, that would be a tragedy." "Marvelous!" the senator beams. "And can you tell me why that would be a tragedy?" "Well," says Johnny, "because it wouldn't be an accident, and it certainly would be no great loss." After 3 crop failures in a row, Farmer Jones could not pay his loan at the bank. "Give me one more chance," he pleaded. "Don't take my farm. We'll be broke and homeless." The bank manager comes up with an idea. "Okay, one more chance, but not with crops. No one fails at pig farming, so we'll finance the purchase of 5 sows to start you off. Your neighbor down the road has a boar pig, and you'll have to take your sows to him so the boar can service them. In a few months, you should have a bunch of little piglets all ready for market." Farmer Jones collects the 5 sows, loads them into his pickup truck, drives to his neighbor, and unloads the 5 sows into the boar's pen. They then go back to the farmhouse and have a couple of beers. When enough time has passed, they go back to the boar's pen and load 5 happy sows into the pickup. Farmer Jones asks, "What if it didn't take?" "That never happens with my boar," replies the neighbor. "But how can I tell for sure?" "Look, tomorrow morning observe your sows. If they're rolling in the mud, it took. If they're on the grass, call me." The following morning, Farmer Jones observed his sows strolling on the grass. He calls his neighbor, who instructs him to bring them back. He rounds them up, loads them into the pickup, and drives to the boar's pen, where the whole process is repeated. Unlucky Farmer Jones has to load them in the pickup and take them back 4 times. On the 5th morning, he is so worried he can't look. He stalls for half an hour, then asks his wife to look. "I hope they're not on the grass, dear." "Well, they're not," says his wife. "Oh, finally, then they're rolling in the mud," exclaimed the farmer. "No." "Well, what are those fool sows doing?" "Well, 4 are trying to climb into the pickup, and the 5th managed to climb into the cab and is trying to honk the horn.